25. Suspend the rules. When an assembly wishes to do something during a meeting that it cannot do without violating one or more of its regular rules, it can adopt a motion to suspend the rules, interfering with the proposed action, provided that the proposal is not in conflict with the organization's bylaws or constitution, with local, state, or national law prescribing procedural rules applicable to the organization or assembly, or the fundamental principle of parliamentary law. Certain descriptive characteristics. The incidental motion to suspend the rules. 1. Can be made at any time that no question is pending. When business is pending, suspend the rules takes precedence over any motion if it is for a purpose connected with that motion. It yields to the motion to lay on the table and to all privileged motions when those motions are in order at the time according to the order of precedence of motions, except that if it relates to the priority of business, it does not yield to a call for the orders of the day. It also yields to incidental motions arising out of itself. 2. Can be applied to any rule of the assembly except bylaws or rules contained in the Constitution or corporate charter. Note, regarding the suspendability of rules and the nature of rules of order when placed in the bylaws or Constitution, see 221. Nothing in a corporate charter can be suspended unless the charter or applicable law so provides. Back to reading. No subsidiary motion can be applied to suspend the rules. 3 is out of order when another has the floor. 4 must be seconded. 5 is not debatable, but see 43, 31 through 32 regarding allowable explanation of an undebatable motion. 6 is not amendable. 7 usually requires a 2/3 vote. See below, however. In any case, no rule protecting a minority of a particular size can be suspended in the face of a negative vote as large as the minority protected by the rule. And 8 cannot be reconsidered. See below regarding its renewal. Further rules and explanation. Object and effect of the motion. The object of the motion is to suspend one or more rules applicable to the assembly, such as rules contained in the parliamentary authority, special rules of order, or standing rules. Note, for the class of rules that an organization or an assembly may adopt, see Chapter 2. Back to reading, that interfere with proposed action during a meeting. A motion to take up a question out of its proper order, or to consider one before a time to which it has been postponed, and an application of the motion to suspend the rules. See Chapters 14 and 41. In making the incidental motion to suspend the rules, the particular rule or rules to be suspended are not mentioned, but the motion must state its specific purpose, and its adoption permits nothing else to be done under the suspension. Such a motion, for instance, may be to suspend the rules and take up the report of the building committee, or to suspend the rules and agree to, that is, adopt without debate or amendment, the resolution. When the purpose of a motion to suspend the rules is to permit the making of another motion, and the adoption of the first motion would obviously be followed by the adoption of the second, the two motions can be combined, as in to suspend the rules and take from the table, Chapter 34, the question relating to. The foregoing is an exception to the general rule that no member can make two motions at the same time except the consent of the assembly, unanimous consent being required if the two motions are unrelated. See also 1025 and 2710 through 11. If a motion to suspend the rules is adopted and its object is to allow consideration of business that could not otherwise have been considered at the time, the chair immediately recognizes the member who moved the suspension of the rules to make the appropriate motion that will bring up the desired business. Or, if no further action is necessary, for example, if the two motions are combined as indicated above, or if the question is one that was postponed, the chair announces the business is pending. Renewal of the motion. If a motion to suspend the rules is voted down, it cannot be renewed by moving to suspend the rules for the same purpose at the same meeting, unless unanimous consent is given. It can, however, be renewed for the same purpose after an adjournment, even if the next meeting is held the same day. Any number of motions to suspend the rules for different purposes can be entertained at the same meeting. Rules that cannot be suspended. Rules contained in the bylaws or constitution cannot be suspended, no matter how large the vote in favor of doing so or how inconvenient the rule in question may be, unless a particular rule specifically provides for its own suspension, or unless the rule properly is in the nature of a rule of order described in 214. However, a rule in the bylaws requiring that a vote, such as for example on the election of officers, be taken by secret ballot, cannot be suspended, so as to violate the secrecy of the members' votes unless the bylaws so provide. See also voting by ballot 4518 through 24. Nothing in a corporate charter can be suspended unless the charter or applicable law so provides. No applicable procedural rule prescribed by federal, state, or local law can be suspended unless the rule specifically provides for its own suspension. Rules which embody fundamental principles of parliamentary law, such as the rule that allows only one question to be considered at a time, see 5.4, cannot be suspended, even by a unanimous vote. Thus, since it is a fundamental principle of parliamentary law that the right to vote is limited to the members of an organization who are actually present at the time the vote is taken in a regular, properly called meeting, see 4556, the rules cannot be suspended so as to give the right to vote to a non-member. Note, in contrast, the rules may be suspended to allow non-members to speak in debate. Back to reading. Or to authorize absentee voting, see 4556 and following. Likewise, since it is a fundamental principle that each member of a deliberative assembly is entitled to one and only one vote on a question, The rules may not be suspended so as to authorize cumulative voting. See 46-43. Rules protecting absentees cannot be suspended even by unanimous consent or an actual unanimous vote because the absentees do not consent to such suspension. For example, the rules requiring that the presence of a quorum, restricting business transacted at a special meeting to that mentioned in the call of the meeting, and requiring previous notice of a proposed amendment to the bylaws protect absentees, if there are any, and cannot be suspended when any member is absent. Note: an elected or appointed body that lacks the authority to determine its own quorum may not suspend the quorum requirement, even if all members are present. Back to reading. Rules protecting a basic right of the individual member cannot be suspended. Thus, while generally applicable limits on debate and the making of motions may be imposed to a motion such as the previous question, the rules may not be suspended so as to deny any particular member the right to attend meetings, make motions or nominations, speak in debate, give previous notice, or vote. These basic rights may be curtailed only through disciplinary proceedings. At a regular meeting of an organization that has an established order of business, the Assembly cannot, even unanimously, vote to dispose with that order of business, in the sense of voting in advance of the time when it adjourns that the order of business shall not be gone through at all at that meeting. If the Assembly, by 2/3 vote, adopts a motion to dispense with the regular order of business and proceed to, note, this usage should be avoided, back to reading, a certain subject, it has in effect voted to suspend the rules and pass all classes in the order of business which normally would precede that subject. See 4137 through 39. In such a case, when the matter taken up out of its proper order has been disposed of, even if it has consumed as much time as the usual meeting, the chair must return to the regular order of business and call for the items in sequence, unless the Assembly then votes to adjourn. See Chapter 21. Rules that have their application outside the session which is in progress cannot be suspended. For example, a policy prohibiting total contributions to any one charitable organization in excess of $500 in any one calendar year is a rule which has its application outside of the meeting context, and thus cannot be suspended so as to permit the adoption of a motion to make a contribution so as in excess of the specified amount. Such a rule can, however, be rescinded or amended. See Chapter 35. Likewise, the rules cannot be suspended in order to permit postponement of a motion to a future session that will be held after the next regular business session or that will be held after more than a quarterly time interval has elapsed. Rules of suspension requires a 2/3 vote. The rules of order of a society is contained in the manual established by the bylaws as the parliamentary authority or is included in any special rules of order adopted by the organization. See Chapter 2, or Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, the suspension of which requires a 2/3 vote. Some societies call all their rules standing rules. By whatever name a rule is called, if it relates to parliamentary procedure, a 2/3 vote is required for its suspension. Rules that can be suspended by a majority vote. In ordinary, note in conventions the term standing rules used in a special sense that may include parliamentary rules adopted by the convention. See 5927 and following. Back to reading. Standing rule, as the term is used in this book, is a rule that does not relate to parliamentary procedure as such and refers, for example, to such matters as the use of recording devices at meetings. See 223. Standing rules can be suspended by a majority vote, though through an incidental main motion adopted by a majority vote, a standing rule can be suspended for the duration of the current session. Suspension of rules by unanimous consent. Frequently, when the matter is clearly not controversial, time may be saved by asking unanimous consent rather than by making a formal motion to suspend the rules. A member who has obtained the floor can say, for example, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent to offer the courtesy resolutions before we receive the report of a special committee. The chair then asks if anyone objects, and if so, proceeds to take a vote on suspending rules, just as if a formal motion had been made. Form an example. The usual form of this motion is Member A obtaining the floor. I move that rules be suspended, or to suspend the rules which interfere with, and stating how object the suspension. Second, or Member A obtaining the floor. I move to suspend the rules and take out. Second. When the object is to adopt a motion without debate or amendment, the form is Member A obtaining the floor. I move to suspend the rules and adopt or agree to the following resolution. Resolved that. Second. A member moving to suspend the rules can briefly give sufficient information to enable the members to vote intelligently on his undebatable motion. For the manner of taking a 2/3 vote, see 438 through 39 and provisions D, E, and G in 449. In announcing an affirmative result, the chair says, for example, there are 2/3 in the affirmative and the rules are suspended for the purpose of. The chair recognizes Mrs. Watkins. If such a motion does not receive the required 2/3 vote, the main motion can be taken up only in the normal way.